Right now on Morning News Now, hope and uncertainty across the Mideast and around the world. Part one of President Trump's historic peace plan taking effect. This morning, all 20 living Israeli hostages are free from Hamas captivity in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. For Israelis, happiness over the emotional homecomings 2 years in the making. While in Gaza, questions about what happens next for the war-torn enclave.
People like the one-state solution. Some people like the two-state solutions. We'll have to see. I haven't commented on that.
We'll have the latest as the next phase of the peace plan comes to light. Shutdown standoff 2 weeks in, and lawmakers are still divided over health care subsidies. Now House Speaker Mike Johnson casting a warning. This could be the longest shutdown ever. Plus, a new round of tariffs in effect starting today. We'll bring you an update from Washington and Wall Street. Developing news, fall flooding. Several states drenched by a powerful storm, packing wind and rain. Now we're tracking a new system taking aim at California. More on the conditions, the threats, and what to expect where you live. And scientific proof of the importance of lifelong friendships. Why researchers say your best friends could be the key to slowing down age at the cellular level. All these studies show it's not even just for your mental health, your physical health. Those friendships mean the best.
So important.
All right. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers.
We're going to begin with news out of Gaza. Some deadly incidents there are seriously testing this fragile ceasefire. This morning, the Israeli military says it opened fire on several people that it said were approaching its position, alleging they had crossed a boundary for the initial Israeli pushback. Health officials in Gaza say the IDF killed at least 6 Palestinians in 2 separate incidents across the enclave.
The renewed violence comes just one day after both Israelis and Palestinians celebrated the return of their loved ones. All 20 living Israeli hostages were released by Hamas, along with 4 deceased bodies, which Israeli officials say they have now identified. In turn, Israel released 250 Palestinian prisoners and 1,700 detainees it had held in prison without charge since October 7th. Well, the releases are part of phase 1 of President Trump's peace plan. Mr. Trump wrapped up his visit to the Middle East yesterday by co-signing a document with the leaders of Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar, backing peace in the region. But attention now turns to the next steps of this plan. That includes the future of Gaza, the prospect of Palestinian statehood, as you heard the president discussing, and the disarming of Hamas. That is something the president expressed uncertainty about during that same flight back to the U.S.
Talking about rebuilding Gaza. I'm not talking about single state or double state or two state. We're talking about the rebuilding of Gaza. A lot of people like the one-state solution. Some people like the two-state solutions. We'll have to see. I haven't commented on that.
In a few moments, we will speak with a family member of 2 former hostages. But before that, let's get to NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley, who's in Israel. He's with us all morning yesterday throughout this process. Matt, it has been a day now since all the living Israeli hostages were released. We have seen these just overwhelmingly emotional reunion videos. What are we hearing from these now freed hostages? And also tell us, what more are we learning about the 4 bodies that were returned?
Yeah, well, right now I'm actually in front of Shiva Hospital, as you can see behind me, and these celebrations, these emotions are now spilling into day 2. These are young religious Jews, Israelis, who are celebrating they're celebrating Simchat Torah, which is a religious holiday, but they're combining that with the celebration of the release of these hostages, about 9 of whom are convalescing in the hospital behind me. Now, as all of this is going on, we're not hearing so much from these hostages. We have seen these incredibly emotional reunions. It's only been a little more than 24 hours since they were released, and we're expecting to hear a lot more about the trials that they endured at the hands of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But like you said, there's still so many questions about this moving forward.
Yeah, and Matt, what can you tell us about those deadly incidents coming out of Gaza this morning? Could they put the ceasefire in any danger?
They absolutely could, but remember that we saw deadly incidents like this in Lebanon, everywhere, with Hezbollah. You know, this is a situation where we're always seeing the Israelis, after they sign some sort of treaty or ceasefire, they will take shots and they will continue to fight, particularly, as they say, if they think that there are Palestinians who are approaching their position in an aggressive way. Now, this violence looks set to continue because the balance of the fighting is actually among different Palestinian factions in the Gaza Strip. Hamas and the Dokhmush clan, along with Al-Shabaab, which is a clan in the Gaza Strip that is widely thought and acknowledged to be backed by the Israelis. Hamas has been going around fighting against people who they say, groups who they say are opposed to them, killing dozens of people. Several Hamas fighters have also been killed in these clashes as well. So we're seeing fighting between the Israelis and Hamas on the one side and fighting among Palestinians on the other, as Hamas takes account of what has happened and, as they say, goes around and tries to inflict punishment on those who oppose them. This happens regularly after long battles between Israel and Hamas. They decide to do summary executions and take justice into their own hands against those they see as internal enemies and spies.
Matt, wow. Also, I want to ask about these crowds in Gaza yesterday welcoming hundreds of Palestinians who had been detained by Israel without charge since October 7th. We're hearing some of their stories now, some of them alleging mistreatment during that time. What can you tell us?
Important to note that not all of these people are without charge. 250 of them were convicted and are serving life sentences. Some of those were sent to the Gaza Strip. But there were about 1,700 more than 1,700, who were released into Gaza and the West Bank and elsewhere ever since and they had been arrested before or after the October 7th attack. So for them, they have been enduring a long time in prison, some of them without charge, many of them minors and women, and the relief is huge. They were subject to a judicial system that had treated them essentially as enemy combatants, and for many, they were too young to be fighters, so it's a massive relief to their families. But those 250 life sentence prisoners have been released from major prisons in the West Bank and elsewhere, in Israel. That is going to be a vexing issue going forward, both for Palestinians and Israelis.
Matt, as we mentioned, the president now back in the U.S. after that whirlwind trip to the Middle East that we followed here yesterday morning, starting in Israel. Then we saw him sign that document in Egypt yesterday. First, what exactly does the document say, and what comes next in this push toward peace?
Yeah, the document was interesting, wasn't it? Because it wasn't the 20-point plan. It was essentially a statement of intention, of peace. Now, I can tell you that nobody here talks about peace nearly as much as what we're hearing from these diplomats. Peace, when it comes to the Middle East, is a term used far more often in Washington than it is in Jerusalem or Ramallah. But this was a stirring moment. But we didn't see the leaders of Israel or the leaders of Hamas or Iran signing on to this peace document, this expression of intent, more than an actual set of guidelines guiding this ceasefire forward.
All right, Matt Bradley, thank you very much.
Let's bring in Dalia Kusnir-Horn. She is the sister-in-law of former hostages Yair Horn, who was released in February, and his brother Eitan Horn, who was released just yesterday. And there we see that moment. Dalia, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about these moments. How are you doing? How's your brother-in-law doing?
I'm just looking at this video over and over again. It makes me cry every time. Wow, I have no words to explain. You know, after we started realizing the horrible condition, the starvation, the torture, and what Hamas terrorists are doing to our hostages, every one of them who's coming back is as if they're coming, you know, from hell into life all of a sudden. And after 2 years of, you know, fighting for them and doing everything we can, the fact that we actually have him and the 3 siblings, my husband together with his 2 brothers that were both abducted, the 3 of them together was the most amazing thing we'd experienced, you know, in a long while.
We know, as we mentioned, Eitan taken hostage alongside his brother Yair, who was released this past February. Our understanding is that they spent some of that time in captivity together, and now he's been pushing for his brother's release since then. Tell us a little bit about their time in captivity, but then also what their reunion was like yesterday.
So they were held together most of the time until Yair's release back in February 15th, 2025. And since Yair was released and a few hours after he landed here at the hospital in Tel Aviv, the first thing he said is, what can I do to release my brother and all the rest, you know? And we tried to make him go through rehabilitation and go to, you know, physical tests and see what's going on, because he came back in a very bad shape, but he was not willing to do so because he understood that we need to release all the hostages. So he's been fighting ever since he was released. We've been fighting ever since October 7th. And the fact that the 20 living hostages came back yesterday was, once again, you know, for all the families, it was the first time we were talking this morning when we met, you know, in the corridors of the hospital, and we said to each other, good morning. And it was the first time that I could really mean the word good in the morning, you know, and it was the first time that we can ever breathe. And at the same time, we sit down with Eitan and he starts talking very slowly about some experiences back there. And immediately, you know, he starts crying or he gets very emotional and very overwhelmed. I think we have a very long way to go. I think it's not going to be easy. You know, the first few days are filled with emotion and adrenaline and good food and clean water, you know, and toilet and things that, I don't know, maybe for us are like normal, like the fact that he woke up today in the morning and the first thing he did was looking for the sun, because for more than 2 years, he has not seen the sun. So we have a long way to go, and he'll be able to share whatever he feels like sharing. But as for now, we're hugging. That's what we do. We're hugging and fighting for the rest of the hostages.
Keep on hugging. We love to see that. I have to imagine, because of what Yair's been through, he can maybe help Eitan in some ways as they go through this recovery process together.
So I'll share a very personal thing that Yair, since his release, said that he's still hostage in Gaza, even though physically his body is in Israel. And when we came yesterday to the hospital, I think we all understand that actually we're getting Eitan and Yair back. And it's the first time that Yair can be released as well, because he was holding it because of the he felt very guilty for the fact that he was released and his youngest brother was still held hostage, and the fact that so many others. And since he came back, he was just fighting and fighting for them. So actually he's helping him because he knows the hospital and stuff like this. But at the same time, both of them, I hope, are going to start their rehabilitation. I want to mention that before they can do it, we still have 24 hostages, the bodies of the deceased hostages, that Hamas is not fulfilling their part. They should have been brought back yesterday. And yesterday they brought only 4 of them, and 24 still need to come back home.
We are happy to hear that message from you and implore that happens. Also, I do want to ask you just broadly, it's been a little over 2 years since the October 7th attacks. What's your hope for your family and the other hostage families as you work to recover from this and as this peace plan hopefully moves forward?
My hope is that we will finish the job of bringing back and making Hamas fulfill their part and bring back the 24 hostages, the bodies of the deceased, for a proper burial in Israel. And then we need to start healing. We've been fighting for 2 years by all means, and we need to start healing and rebuilding our loved country. And I think that we need to start planning and acting and doing more agreements in the region, because the only way of living here in the Middle East is if we do more agreements. We don't want to fight anymore. The Israeli society, we don't want to fight anymore. We want to live in peace with our neighbors. You know, we might not become best friends, but I don't think it matters, and that's not the idea. We want to be able to dream of a better future. I have 2 young kids. I want them to be able to live in peace. I want the Gazati people to be able to dream with a better future for the kids as well. So I think this is the next challenge that waits for us once we bring back everyone home.
A great message. Dalia Kusnir-Horn, a good morning indeed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, back here at home, today marks day 14 of the government shutdown, with lawmakers remaining deeply divided over federal funding. The Senate is expected to be back in session today, but members of the House of Representatives will remain home this week as Speaker Mike Johnson decided to not bring back lawmakers this week.
House Democrats are reconvening today and planning to get together in person for a caucus meeting. Johnson's now predicting the current shutdown may become the longest in history. Right now, the record is 35 days. Johnson says he will not negotiate with Democrats until they set aside their demands to fund Obamacare subsidies.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us now with the latest. Mel, good morning. So the expiring subsidies of the Affordable Care Act remain like really the center of this standoff 2 weeks after it got started, and Democratic leaders are just not budging on the issue. What else are we hearing from House Speaker Johnson about where things stand right now? What's it going to take for lawmakers to come together at all?
Yeah, good morning, guys. They are still at a standoff on Capitol Hill as we are now into the second week of this shutdown, and there are no signs that either side is budging. Republicans continue to insist that they are not going to entertain any negotiations over health care until Democrats open the government first. But Democrats, they are deeply skeptical that Republicans actually will cut a deal with them. It is a very complex issue, and so that is why they are withholding their votes, because they want some sort of forcing mechanism in order to ensure that there is a deal cut. However, Speaker Mike Johnson, he says he doesn't even want to get in a room with the other congressional leaders, something that has happened in the past. Just listen to what he said at his press conference yesterday.
The Senate Democrats cannot tell voters that they're willing to hold hostage funding for the nutrition of women, infants, and children in exchange for restoring health care to illegal aliens. So they want to do this behind closed doors. And you've heard Chuck Schumer say breathlessly, I just want the 4 leaders to get in a back room and make a deal. We're not doing that. We're not doing that anymore. We're getting back to regular order, and it's infuriating that that's what he continues to demand.
Now, Democrats have been hopeful that President Donald Trump will ultimately get antsy and want to cut a deal with Democrats, especially because so many Republican voters do rely on those Obamacare subsidies. But he's been distracted because he's been in the Middle East. So we'll see if he decides to get more dialed in now that he is back home.
So Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says Coast Guard service members will get their paychecks this week. And just a few days ago, we know President Trump announced he was directing Defense Department officials to pay military members who are set to get paid tomorrow. What more can you tell us about how they're going to get paid and just how this decision was made?
Yeah, so this is a trend that we are now seeing from the Trump administration. And what they're doing here is essentially moving funds around that have already been appropriated by Congress for other things in order to pay the troops, pay the Coast Guard, or in one case, they're also talking about using tariff money to try to fund WIC, which is the Women, Infants, and Children Nutrition Program. Unclear if they actually have the legal authority to do some of this stuff. We're not seeing Democrats challenge them. But what this tells me, guys, is that the White House is preparing for a long shutdown fight. And it also alleviates some of the biggest pain points and pressure points in a shutdown. So there is less incentive for both sides, frankly, to try to get a deal here now that some of these biggest pressure points have been alleviated. But that being said, that doesn't mean the impacts of the shutdown are completely gone, because, of course, so many federal workers still either being furloughed, forced to work without pay, or now, in some cases, losing their jobs altogether.
Mel, over the weekend, also the Trump administration reversed some layoffs. This is at the CDC. Hundreds of scientists received incorrect notifications, that's what they're being called, that they were being laid off. That's according to an official familiar with the matter. What happened there?
Yeah, the layoff notices that went out incorrectly were for people that work at the CDC, that work on tracking pandemics. Obviously, such an important job, as we've seen over the years. But what the administration said was that these were sent out because of a glitch. They also blamed the chaos of the shutdown and said these mistakes were made just because we're not operating at full force. But of course, this is very reminiscent of the DOGE cuts earlier this year, when there were many layoffs that were made, later reversed. So this seems to be par for the course for this administration.
All right, Melanie Zanona, thank you very much.
So as the shutdown drags on, Wall Street's on a roller coaster ride. U.S. markets bounced back yesterday, recovering some of last week's major losses. Investors were relieved to see signs of softening trade tensions between the U.S. and China. That's why the Dow jumped nearly 600 points yesterday, while the S&P 500 and the tech-heavy NASDAQ also showed signs of life, coming off their worst day since April.
Today, global markets are mixed after initially joining a rebound driven in part by a post from President Trump on Truth Social. It's on your screen right now. It said in part, "Don't worry about China. It will all be fine." All of this comes as fresh tariffs on imported goods kick in today here in the U.S., and a new report suggests American consumers are the ones bearing more than half the cost of President Trump's tariffs.
NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here to break it all down for us. So a lot to cover. Let's talk about the trade war, which is really roiling the markets. We saw late last week President Trump threatening 100% tariffs on China taking effect November 1st. Markets didn't like that. What's happened since then? Where do things stand?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like for like a hot second, there was a little bit of calm on the tariff front. And now here we are with the tariff headlines again resurfacing after the president threatened a 100% tariff on China. This all began last week when China announced new export restrictions on so-called rare earth minerals. These are types of inputs that are necessary for EV production, as well as AI infrastructure. They said that they would be kind of tightening their control over how much of that gets exported to the rest of the world. President Trump not taking kindly to that, going on Truth Social almost instantly and saying he was going to take action, and even suggested he might cancel an upcoming meeting with President Xi Jinping. So the breakdown in conversation between the two big economic powers that is the United States and China has been in focus. That 100% tariff is something that the president says he could put into effect on November 1. That effectively sets a new deadline for negotiations with the Chinese, although I should point out that U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent did point out on Fox Business yesterday that the meeting with the Chinese is likely still on. The president doesn't intend to cancel that for now.
Brian, what about these new tariffs that go into effect today? What kind of items are we talking about?
Yeah, well, if anyone's trying to do a home remodel, this could impact you. Now what we're talking about here is 10% on imported wood and timber. A lot of that comes in from Canada, by the way, in addition to 25% on imported upholstered furniture and 25% on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities. And by the way, those tariff rates will go up once we get to January 1st, 50% for kitchen cabinets. And it is pretty remarkable how specific we're getting with these tariffs now with something like kitchen cabinets. But again, anyone that's doing any sort of home reno is likely going to be, listening very closely for that, because those costs could get a lot more expensive.
The cabinets and vanities now. Let's talk more about prices. This new report from Goldman Sachs seems to suggest American consumers are struggling with high prices because of the tariffs here. What does the report conclude? And are we getting a better idea of where prices could go from here?
Yeah, this Goldman Sachs analysis saying that the tariffs put into place since the president started his second term, 55% of those costs have been shouldered by American consumers. And that's important to note because that goes against what the administration's been saying, which is that other countries will be paying those costs. And again, as a reminder to people, the way that tariffs work is that when an importing company, which is almost always an American company, here stateside tries to bring in, let's say, for example, a kitchen cabinet or a kitchen cabinet, well, then that is going to get tariffed. They're the ones that pay that cost. They then pass it on to the consumer in the form of a higher price. The Goldman Sachs analysis confirming that's the case. And that could likely get higher as we talk about these added tariffs, especially if there were to be that 100% tariff on China at the end of this month.
So, Brian, during his re-election campaign, President Trump, he promised to bring prices down on day one. That was a big piece of this. We know how much the economy mattered to people during the election. Has any progress been made at all? How's the White House defending what they've been doing?
Yeah, well, look, the overall rates of inflation are somewhere between 2 to 3%, depending on what month you're looking at, which I think by all standards is relatively good when you consider the rate of inflation was somewhere closer to like 8 or 9% during 2022, specifically during the summer. So from that perspective, yes, prices are not that bad in terms of the rate of inflation. But again, it's still positive. Prices are not going down on an overall level. What the White House has said in terms of, kind of pushing back against some of these tariff talks about Americans shouldering the cost. This is Kush Desai, a spokesperson for the White House. They're basically saying that the cost of tariffs will ultimately be borne by foreign exporters. But take a look at that first sentence. They may face a transition period from tariffs, upending a broken status quo, as they describe it. So they're kind of admitting that there's going to be this period of time where Americans might be paying those higher costs, but it's going to be worth it to reshore American manufacturing. Again, how long that takes, though, is the open question here.
All right. Brian, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Brian. Well, if you're anywhere on the East Coast, you probably feel like you are stuck on weather repeat with this slow-moving nor'easter that seems like it is just dragging on. Well, the coastal storm is finally expected to pass out of New England by the end of today. Those rains and powerful winds, though, will still linger for areas along the coast after 20 million people were under coastal flood alerts yesterday. For more on the impacts of this fall nor'easter, here's NBC News correspondent Sam Brock.
The powerful nor'easter that's pounded the eastern seaboard, taking aim at the Jersey Shore.
We wanted to see how much beach we had left,
leaving Ocean City under feet of water. We're now approaching high tide, and barricades litter Ocean City, blocking drivers off from streets. And not for a few wet patches either. I'm a half a block away. This water goes as far as the eye can see. Officials today taking stock of the disintegrating beach, which caved before our very eyes.
Look at that. Yeah. Yep. Taking it with them.
Frank Donato is the emergency management coordinator. In 1 week, this entire dune has been eroded.
Correct. Yes. So it takes one storm. That's all.
In New York City, city officials say the nor'easter's howling winds ripped a solar panel off a carport, hitting and killing a 76-year-old woman. The system's devastating force also felt in the Carolinas, where mounds of sand line Hatteras Island on the Outer Banks, the bumps on the ground, cars buried underneath it. While thousands of miles away in Alaska, remnants of a typhoon stranding people in remote villages who had to be hoisted to safety by Coast Guard helicopters. At least 3 people are still unaccounted for. Doreen Carter's home was swept away with her family inside. They escaped by boat, but she says now there is no home and no town to return to.
The house is unlivable. We can't live in there anymore. This is the worst ever. Kitnik is totally wiped out.
Sam Brock, NBC News.
With that big nor'easter clearing out, there is a new severe storm threat on the West Coast this morning.
That's right. Angie Lassman has your morning news now forecast. Taking a look at that. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. Indeed, we have to watch the West Coast. Just a quick note about the nor'easter. You can see things drying out by afternoon. We've still got some of those morning showers and breezy conditions and maybe still some coastal flooding, but improvements on the way, especially as we get into the second half of the day. Different story, as you mentioned, out west where we are ramping things up. We've got the potential for some severe storms even this morning. There is a threat of a couple of tornadoes here as we get through our morning hours on the West Coast. Notice this thunderstorm watch that's in effect, including parts of Southern California, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, included in that thunderstorm watch through 6 a.m. Pacific time. So we'll watch for that as some of this rain is continuing to stream on in. You can see flash flood warnings and flood watches are up for that same region. We're going to have kind of repeated rounds of this heavy rain as the day goes on. It's all part of this system that's going to work farther to the east through the day today. It ramps up the snow and wind across parts of the Sierra Mountain range. We'll watch for that to make travel impactful, of course, for that region. You can see some of this rain spreading farther into Nevada as well. We'll see the possible flooding last through the day today in California. And then this area of snow and rain expands across parts of the Rockies. We'll still be dealing with some of those stronger storms across parts of the Southwest as well. No surprise, as I mentioned, we've got some snow on the way. So winter alerts are up. Winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories stretching across the Sierra range. You've got Lake Tahoe included in there, Mammoth Lakes also. So a heads up, again, travel is going to be difficult. We're also concerned about that rainfall, specifically for Southern California through Thursday. Notice multiple inches of rain possible. We'll watch for the debris flows. We'll watch for issues with the burn scar areas. Any area that you often see flooding when we get a good dose of rain across that region, likely to flood today. And then as we talk about the Sierra range, notice 36 inches in the highest peaks. We'll see some significant snowfall. I know skiers, snowboarders, happy about that. But again, this is going to cause some difficulty when it comes to travel across that area. And this will be snowfall that we get through Thursday. So we've got a couple days as this system works across that region, guys.
Just ski to your destination.
Yeah, there you go. Good idea.
All right. Thanks,
Time
Angie.
for snow. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Angie. All right. Well, this morning, SpaceX is celebrating a successful test flight of its massive Starship rocket. The largest and most powerful rocket ever built completed a suborbital flight yesterday, building off their victory during a similar test back in August. The Starship blasted off from southern Texas to conduct a series of tests, including practice for future landings back at the launch site. The spacecraft went to the edge of Earth's atmosphere before it eventually splashed down in the Indian Ocean. This marked the 11th test flight for a full-scale Starship rocket. It's what SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk hopes will one day be used to send people to Mars. It is also, though, a critical part of NASA's Artemis program. That's the one that plans to land astronauts on the moon for the first time since the Apollo missions. We'll have a good space story.
Moon first, then Mars.
Yeah. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, worry on Wall Street. Why some investors say the long recent stock surge is too good to be true.
Up first, emergency in Mexico. Dozens killed after days of torrential flooding. Now the search is on for several people who are still missing. We're going to bring you the latest when we come back.
Welcome back. Well, Monday morning, a small plane crashed on a highway median during rush hour in Massachusetts, causing chaos. And get this, that is just one of 3 recent fatal air crashes now currently under investigation across the country. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the details and a warning that some of these videos may be disturbing.
Federal investigators poring over deadly scenes following 2 plane crashes ending in a fiery nightmare.
Dude, it's a plane, dude.
In Massachusetts, flames covering the highway.
We have a confirmed plane crash with possible injuries, active fire, and jet fuel spilled.
Morning commuters swerving after a small aircraft slammed into the median, killing 2, according to state police.
All of a sudden, everybody locked up the brakes, and we all kind of zigzagged.
In Texas, investigators say 2 people died Sunday when a plane struck tractor trailers in a fireball. According to authorities, the Beechcraft King Air C-90 had taken off from a nearby airport in Fort Worth. While in Southern California, a helicopter sent debris flying Saturday, spinning, then slicing through palm trees before crashing in a beachside parking lot. Officials say 2 people on board and 3 bystanders were injured but survived, adding the chopper was supposed to be part of a Cars and Copters event. Several witnesses rushing to pull at least 1 victim to safety. 3 frightening accidents in 3 days that remain under investigation. Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Los Angeles.
More than 60 people are now confirmed dead after days of torrential rain fueled catastrophic floods in eastern Mexico. Residents in some cities described walls of water sweeping away cars and houses within minutes and buckling roads. As NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal explains, the search is ongoing for dozens who remain missing.
The desperate search for 65 people still missing after catastrophic floods swept through Mexico. 64 people confirmed killed as days of torrential rain pounded the central and eastern parts of the country, pushing rivers past their limits, a wall of water washing away homes and swallowing up cars.
No tenemos nada.
Epifania Hernandez in the state of Veracruz says people are trapped, adding she, her family, and others have been left with nothing. Local authorities there say the Cazones River rose nearly 5 feet in just a matter of minutes, leaving no time for residents to escape.
Nadie estaba previsto para esto.
This business owner saying no one was prepared for this, pointing to the tables, chairs, and everything else he's lost. The National Guard and local rescue teams have been searching for survivors through waist-deep water for days. 900 rescues carried out on Friday alone, according to Mexico's Navy.
Lamentablemente se nos taparon las casas.
Maria Elena Santos says she was able to get out, adding that her family members barely made it. Images from above show the destruction. What was once lush and green, now underwater. Electricity cut off, roads blocked by debris, and streets covered in mud. A total of 8,700 military personnel on the ground to assist in the recovery effort. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum touring the devastation Sunday, vowing to help with cleanup, food, and drinking water.
And our thanks to Camila Bernal for that report. Coming up, rural communities losing access to critical health care.
Sounds dramatic to say, like, oh, people are going to die, but it's true. People literally are going to die.
We return why policy changes are forcing some hospitals to shut down.
And also, Taylor Swift sang about it, so let's talk about it. We'll unpack the pressures of being the eldest daughter in the family. Your weekly check-in on Morning News Now is next. We We are back with a look at how tens of millions of Americans are at risk of losing critical access to health care in their communities. It's due in large part to policy changes and affordability issues. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz went to one rural county in California that is being forced to close its only hospital.
Inside this hospital in Glenn County, California, fear from patients about what comes next.
It is going to be tough on the community because, what are you going to do without a hospital?
Bobby Goodwin was born in the very hospital where he's now recovering from a broken hip. But later this month, Glenn Medical Center, the only hospital in this rural county, will close. Staff, like Director of Nurses Brittany Mundy, will lose their jobs, but warn the consequences will be far more dire.
It might sound dramatic to say, like, oh, people are going to die, but it's true. People literally are going to die because if you have a heart attack or a stroke and you're 40 minutes away from a hospital, it might be too late.
For more than 20 years, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, had classified this hospital as critical access, meaning it received millions of dollars in federal funding to help ensure access to health care in underserved areas. But earlier this year, the hospital learned that status was being revoked. Without the federal funds, it can't afford to stay open.
Was everyone's mouths on the floor when they got that letter?
Yes. They're like, why is it changing 24 years later?
The reason for the change? 2 miles. Critical access hospitals must be the only hospital within 35 miles. During a review of Glenn Medical Center's eligibility, CMS noted there's another hospital 33 miles away in a neighboring county. That calculation based on this 2-lane back road to get there.
Locals tell us they never go this way. They say they always get stuck behind trucks and tractor trailers, and they say that this route consistently floods in the winter when it rains.
Some people can't afford to drive, like they don't have the gas money.
But CMS tells NBC News that because of the law, it's not able to factor in things like weather or road conditions. Patients like Arturo Perez are already feeling the pain. He dislocated his knee over the summer and needs an MRI.
Yes, and it's just every day thinking if I need surgery or not.
With Glenn Medical no longer available, the next nearest hospital is now 40 minutes away. And when Arturo's mother, Jamie, tried to make an appointment there, she says the wait time was 5 weeks.
It feels like people don't care. It feels like the people in power are not caring about the little guys. They're in places where they have access to care that now all the people in this community don't.
This community is not alone. Advocacy groups say that nationwide more than 700 rural hospitals are currently at risk of closing due to financial strain and potential cuts to Medicaid. That accounts for about a third of all rural hospitals across the country.
Liz Kreutz, thank you.
Time now for our weekly mental health check-in. This week we're looking at the rise of embedded therapists, with more schools placing them right inside dorms.
Very cool. Plus, why therapists and even a new Taylor Swift song are sparking conversations about the pressures felt by those of us who are eldest daughters.
Joining us now for more on these mental health headlines, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. She is a psychotherapist and the host of the Pivot with Robbie Ludwig podcast. Dr. Robbie, always good to have you with us. So let's start with these embedded therapists. We're seeing more colleges turning to this approach of actually embedding professionals right inside dorms and academic buildings. Why do you think this is getting so popular, and what makes it especially effective or appealing for students?
This is such a great idea because colleges are making available mental health services to a vulnerable population. Very often college students suffer from depression and anxiety. And with these embedded therapists, there's practically no wait time. They're part of the community. There's less resistance to traveling to go to a therapist. And also these embedded therapists are helping with mental health literacy for the college educators and making a more supportive, cohesive network for mental health knowledge and accessibility.
Okay, next is a topic. Love this one, not only because it has to do with Taylor Swift, but because I'm an eldest daughter. We've talked a lot about how birth order ends up shaping your personality, your mental health, kind of your whole life experience. In this new song, it's called Eldest Daughter. It sparked these conversations just about the pressure that firstborn girls feel to kind of hold everything together. What do you think about the song and the conversation, and what is your advice for eldest daughters?
I do love how Taylor Swift addresses, issues that affect her and her audience. I'm an eldest daughter too. And so according to Birth Order, an eldest daughter, you're your parents first. So they might make mistakes with you. And very often there's a pressure to be perfect and to please the parent. And in some cases, be adult-like in the family. And so in this song, Taylor Swift is addressing that and also saying, I'm not going to be perfect. Life is messy, but I'll always be there for you. So for first daughters, it's important to be less perfectionistic, set boundaries, and realize that your intention to be good may be enough.
I like that, your intention.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yes.
Doctor. Yeah.
All right, finally, we're going to look at a study out of Cornell University found that these strong, lasting friendships, they actually just slow aging at the cellular level. So talk about the connection here. And are there things, little tips you have to just make sure those friendships that we've been holding on to for so long, they continue to bring us these benefits?
Yeah, so this is the study of epigenetics, and it's how your lifestyle impacts your DNA expression and cells as well. So long-term friendships and a sense of belonging and a sense of community for a lifetime helps us deal with intense stress levels, knowing that we belong, a reminder of our history and childhood that gets forgotten. All of these relationships really do matter. And this study showed that cellular aging actually slows down. And we can see this with twin studies based on lifestyle choices. So it's another good reason to put a lot of energy into our friendships, into our connections, because it really does increase our overall mental health and physical well-being and aging. Who doesn't want to look younger?
Yeah, no kidding. That right there, no kidding.
That is so neat.
I'm going to text, I'm still in a text chain with my second grade friends, and I'm going to say, hey, we're helping each other's cells out now.
Yeah.
So, and we look
That's
younger.
right.
Dr. Robbie, thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome back. The boom in artificial intelligence has been pushing Wall Street to record highs. The surge in stocks, though, is drawing comparisons to the dot-com bubble of 1999, which eventually burst in the year 2000. So are we headed in the same direction? NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans looks at the growing debate among investors.
Seems nothing can hold back the bulls on Wall Street. Not trade wars, interest rates, or nagging concerns over the cost of living. Stocks fueled by trillions in spending on artificial intelligence. U.S. markets setting record after record high. In the past 3 years, the tech-heavy NASDAQ has doubled. The chairman of the Federal Reserve called stocks fairly highly valued. If it all has you humming Prince and partying like it's 1999, you're not alone.
What's interesting is these internet stocks continue to take off. And
many now starting to draw comparisons to the dot-com bubble. Some saying AI isn't helping enough companies make more money yet. Others saying the massive spending deals are circular. Billionaire investor Paul Tudor Jones saying this bubble 2.0 could be even bigger.
If anything now is so much more potentially explosive than 1999.
Back then, the internet was new and transformative, and companies with no sales were flying high. There was skepticism, like from our own Tom Costello back in the last month of the millennium.
Are moving higher and advancing, even though many still don't have revenues, let alone earnings.
Legendary investor Warren Buffett, known as the Oracle of Omaha, likes to look at how stocks are valued versus the size of the economy, or GDP. His measure reaching record highs during the dot-com bubble before the market crashed. Its levels today dwarfing the peak of 25 years ago, reaching heights he has said is, quote, playing with fire. For now, markets are on fire, a lot like the go-go days of the late 90s. The market so frothy then, the Fed chief in 1996 famously warned of irrational exuberance. And he was right. But stocks would double over the next 3 years before the bubble finally burst.
The bad news just keeps coming.
Tech analyst Dan Ives thinks there's still more room to run.
This AI arms race, we're in a 1996 moment today, not a 1999 moment.
But others more cautious. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon telling the BBC he's concerned about a stock market correction or when stocks fall more than 10%.
I am far more worried about that than others. I'm not saying
one-third chance of a correction.
Yeah, and I'm not saying next year. Because the timing of these things is almost impossible to figure out.
Even for the smartest guys in the room, calling a bubble is one thing, timing it another. Christine Romans, NBC News.
Some more money headlines for you now. If you're in the market for a new car, got some tough news for your wallet.
CNBC's Frank Collin joins us with the details and other Wall Street news. Hey, Frank, good morning.
Hey, good morning to both of you. So here's the news. The price of a new car has topped $50,000 for the first time ever, driven by a surge in sales of EVs. Also, as the government's tax credit for EVs expires. Kelley Blue Book says buyers, they paid an average of $50,000 and $80,000 in September. Up more than 3% from a year ago. New car prices are up more than 25% from 5 years ago as people are buying more expensive trucks and SUVs, as many of us know if you're on the road. Microsoft is testing more in-house AI models as it looks to reduce its dependence on partner OpenAI. Microsoft says it's very good at creating photorealistic results and can generate natural lighting and landscapes. The company says it plans to roll out the new tool out to Copilot and bring the image creator very soon. This new product's called MAI Image One. And Taylor Swift selling more than 4 million copies of her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, in its first week. That's the biggest debut since tracking began back in 1991. Of those sales, 3.5 million were vinyl, CDs, cassettes, and digital downloads. The numbers, they're simply unprecedented in the streaming era when physical sales, they pretty much collapsed. Other top artists like Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar have sold in the range of 200,000 to 400,000 copies in their first week. So just another win for Taylor Swift.
No surprise.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, a special father-son moment shared with millions of football fans.
So just to see him out there, holding my hand through the flag, Pledge of Allegiance, and then going out there with me, holding my hand the whole way, man, it's meant a lot.
We come back. What made this coin toss before Sunday's Seahawks-Jaguars game extra special? You are watching Morning News Now.
We're going to end this hour with a heartfelt moment on the field before the Jacksonville Jaguars took on the Seattle Seahawks over the weekend. Jaguars defensive end Josh Hines-Allen did the coin toss with his 8-year-old son in honor of a major milestone for their family. NBC News Now anchor Kate Snow has their story.
Kickoff was extra special for one NFL team this weekend. The Jacksonville Jaguars had an honorary captain at the coin toss, Wesley Hines-Allen, son of defensive end Josh Hines-Allen. The 8-year-old was diagnosed with leukemia at the end of the 2024 season.
And they told us that he had leukemia, and I was just like, it just kind of like hit me. And then nothing else mattered after that.
The duo sharing a special father-son moment on the field. Hines-Allen reacting to it during an interview with Jacksonville's WJXT News 4.
What did the coin toss mean to you?
Man, it was huge, man, just to be able to really capture that moment, capture those memories with him. That's something I'll never forget. So just to see him out there, holding my hand through the flag, Pledge of Allegiance, and then going out there with me, holding my hand the whole way, man, it's meant a lot.
Wesley completed his cancer treatment in August, and his doctors say he's now in remission.
Wesley is doing great. He's swimming every day. He's running around. He's playing sports.
The Hines-Allen family started their own foundation called the For One For All Foundation in support of pediatric cancer research, with a mission to create lasting change in the lives of young people and families facing some of life's toughest challenges. Kate Snow, NBC News.
All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now. Don't go anywhere, though. The news continues right now. Good morning, and thank you so much for starting your Tuesday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, President Trump back on American soil this morning after a whirlwind trip to the Middle East, bolstered by a peace plan between Israel and Hamas. Cheers and celebrations ringing out across Israel yesterday after all 20 living hostages taken during the October 7th attacks returned home. But amid all the joy and optimism, the question of what's next grips leaders across the globe. We will dig into it all. Also this morning, measles cases at their highest level in over 30 years, wreaking havoc on students back in the classroom. Hundreds of unvaccinated children quarantined for weeks on end after being exposed. And some doctors say the worst might be yet to come. What parents need to know this morning. Plus, the major Wi-Fi upgrade coming for frustrated flyers who are fed up with those choppy, unstable connections in the skies. We're climbing aboard one big airliner that's now looking to the stars to give internet speeds a boost at 35,000 feet. And caption craze as more and more viewers in the streaming era opt to turn on the subtitles. The new research that shows different generations are doing it for very different reasons. Joe will explain later this hour. I am not a subtitle user, but I can't wait to hear him out. We're going to begin this hour, though, in the Middle East, where all of the remaining living hostages taken by Hamas on October 7th have finally. Cheers rang out throughout Israel yesterday as the first phase of President Trump's peace plan to end the war in Gaza took effect. So in exchange for those 20 living hostages, also busloads of Palestinian detainees freed. President Trump stopped by the Knesset in Israel to commemorate the historic day.
And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace.
That was him speaking to the Israeli parliament for over an hour, a historic moment. And of course, yesterday was a day of joy for many, but some families are still awaiting the remains of their loved ones. The IDF says they only received 4 of the 28 bodies Hamas promised to release in the phase of this deal. NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas is in Tel Aviv with the latest.
Israelis and Palestinians waking up this morning to a new dynamic in this war. Here in Israel, the hostages are back, but in Gaza, Palestinians are still struggling for aid. According to the UN, 80% of Gaza has been destroyed. And this morning, we are tracking news that less than 24 hours into this process, there is a new clash. Israelis saying they were forced to fire on Gazans who had crossed a boundary agreed upon in that new peace plan.
Early this morning, President Trump returning to the U.S.
This was really a historic day, to put it mildly, right?
Following that whirlwind day in the Middle East, culminating with that historic summit in Egypt. The president signing a declaration aimed at ending 2 years of war, though leaders of Israel and Hamas were not present.
Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East.
Earlier in the day, the president addressing the Israeli parliament, where he was hailed a hero. Part of the ceasefire deal, the release of 20 living Israeli hostages.
20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families.
And these many emotional homecomings. Eitan Moore held captive for nearly 2 years, reuniting with his father. Segev Kalfan with his family again. They learned only a few months ago he was still alive. And Eviatar David, back home with his family. 2 months ago, Hamas released a video of him digging his own grave. In Gaza and the West Bank, jubilation as well. Thousands of released Palestinian prisoners and detainees returning home. Back in Tel Aviv, we spoke again with Moshe Levi, who had been waiting to reunite with his brother-in-law, Omri Miran. Omri was kidnapped in front of his wife and 2 daughters.
We were so excited to see him crossing the border. The first thing we did was just hug each other.
For Miran, like the other hostages, the recovery will take time. Levy tells us his brother-in-law's meals are portioned out so his body can readjust to a normal diet after 2 years of starvation.
He can't eat everything he wants to right now because of the conditions in captivity.
For those freed, both Israelis and Palestinians, a day of joy and hope, a day few believe could happen. But there are still many challenges and questions, from who will rebuild Gaza to the disarming of Hamas, significant obstacles to a lasting peace.
Here in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, you can see the count-up clock, and it's still counting from the moment of those October 7th terrorist attacks. And the reason is because there's still unfinished business here, according to Israel. Hamas has to give up the remains of any hostages they still have. They think that number is 28. These are people that were either killed in the attacks that Hamas took back into Gaza, or hostages that were killed while they were in Gaza during the war. Now, Hamas has turned over the remains of 4 victims so far, and Israel says they have identified them, but there are still 24 outstanding that they are demanding Hamas now turn over.
All right, Tom, thank you very much. Well, for more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake. So, Garrett, what are the next steps for President Trump and his peace plan? We heard him even yesterday kind of reference we're already into phase 2, but tactically, what actually is happening and will happen next?
Yeah, Savannah, a lot of work to be done to take what was a ceasefire deal, essentially, and turn it into a proper peace. On the Gaza front, it really falls into two parts, the rebuilding and the governance part. Rebuilding is a massive process, something like 80% of the Strip destroyed, but it's a little bit more straightforward. You'll see some of these wealthy Arab countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, hopefully get involved in the rebuilding process there. That's the way the president sees it happening. That's some of what we're already starting to see with the aid coming in. The bigger problems are the political problems about who governs Gaza going forward. These have been problems for decades. They're problems still. Will Hamas disarm? Will they be willing to give up their weapons? Will they leave political power to someone else in Gaza? And who is that someone? And what happens with a future Palestinian state? The president's plan kind of nods at the idea that there could be an independent Palestinian state at some point in the future. But that's something that the Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, very much opposed. The president's comments on it yesterday were all kicking the can down the road, basically saying, we'll see. We will see, Savannah, even as the negotiations around this continue in Egypt.
Garrett, it looks like the president is now also, by the way, setting his sights on other foreign policy goals. We heard him mention some of that yesterday. Tell us about that.
Yeah, he referenced Iran several times, suggesting that the U.S. is ready to talk to Iran, ready to have some kind of more serious relationship with that country just a few months after bombing them, suggesting that the change in tenor overall in the Middle East has created an opportunity there. And then, of course, there is the other big global conflict that remains unresolved, the war between Russia and Ukraine. The president has also talked about that in recent days, saying he thought that would be the easiest problem to solve. It remains one of the hardest. He's got Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, coming here to the White House on Friday to resume talks with him, this time about long-range missiles, which are something that could potentially increase the pressure on Russia. So never a break here at the White House from international crises. But the president certainly feels like he's got some momentum, got the wind in his back a little bit after putting, at least in his mind, the Israel and Gaza war behind him.
And
Savannah?
Quite the whirlwind trip, not even overnighting in the Middle East. Garrett, thank you very much. Well, let's stay in Washington, where the stalemate continues this morning as the government shutdown has now reached a 14th day with no end in sight. The Senate is expected back in session today. Meanwhile, House Democrats are expected to meet tonight, despite technically not being back in session, to discuss a path forward in their fight with Republicans. With growing flight delays, that's because of TSA and the FAA being impacted, and then mass layoffs for federal workers, the effects of the shutdown are beginning to be felt around the country by all of us. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has the latest from Washington.
Joe and Savannah, good morning. House Speaker Mike Johnson is warning this shutdown could be one of the longest ever, insisting Republicans have nothing to negotiate until Democrats relent on their demand to extend health care subsidies. All of it leaving the future of thousands of federal workers hanging in the balance. With the government shutdown now in its second week, House Speaker Mike Johnson is digging in.
We're barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history unless Democrats drop their partisan demands.
Republicans won't negotiate over a short-term funding bill unless Democratic leaders back off their demand to extend Obamacare tax credits, enacted during the pandemic and set to expire at the end of this year as part of any deal.
They put an end date on it because they knew that it was supposed to be related to COVID. And it's become a boondoggle.
Democrats warn premiums will skyrocket if the subsidies aren't extended.
People are facing these dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles.
As the shutdown drags on, the damage is mounting, with the Trump administration expected to lay off more than 4,000 workers across 7 federal agencies. Meanwhile, concern at the nation's airports that widespread staffing shortages could lead to more flight disruptions. While Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is facing scrutiny for a new video intended to be shown at TSA checkpoints, blaming Democrats for the shutdown.
Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted.
Officials at more than a half dozen airports say they won't display the video because of its political message. DHS have not responded to our request for comment. In Washington, the Smithsonian museums have temporarily shuttered, along with the National Zoo. Those zookeepers are still caring for the animals during the shutdown. Just across the street, bakery owner Yael Krigman says her business is already feeling the impact.
Especially as a small business, we really rely on the foot traffic from the zoo.
And a White House spokesperson responded to the criticism around the video by Secretary Noem, accusing Democrats of being responsible for the shutdown by saying that, quote, the administration won't shy away from sharing the truth with the American people. But many airports across the country have declined to show the video because of its overtly political message. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Well, there are renewed concerns this morning about measles outbreaks in schools across the country. This comes after the CDC reported the highest number of cases in over 3 decades back in July. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda joins us now with more on this. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Good morning. That number keeps rising. It hasn't been even 2 months since that deadly measles outbreak in Texas ended, but the highly contagious disease continues to pop up across the country. And now with the new school year in full swing, new cases are forcing hundreds of students to be quarantined for weeks on end. And some doctors say the situation will likely get worse.
This morning, measles cases are bubbling up again and wreaking havoc on the school year. After exposure to the disease, health officials reporting more than 150 unvaccinated children between 2 schools in South Carolina have been forced out of the classroom and into quarantine for 3 weeks, the length of time it could take for symptoms like fever, a cough, or rash to emerge.
You have to then stay away from school for 3 weeks, which is going to hurt your ability to learn. And so hundreds of children now are suffering the fact that they aren't going to be able to go to school. And that's just one of the many consequences, I think, of these kinds of outbreaks.
An outbreak has also been growing in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, where 118 students are under quarantine, according to health officials. And a measles exposure temporarily closed a preschool, according to local reports in central Ohio. While one of the largest multi-state outbreaks of the year continues sweeping along the Arizona-Utah border, with more than 100 people diagnosed with the disease. It comes as an NBC News investigation found notable declines in childhood vaccination rates in 77% of counties and jurisdictions since 2019, including in St. Louis, Missouri, where the Pratt family is concerned about their 9-year-old who has an autoimmune disease.
One child or adult could cause an outbreak that she potentially would have life-threatening illnesses or complications from.
The CDC has confirmed more than 1,500 measles cases this year, the highest number since 1992. And while critics say there's been mixed messaging from the Trump administration around vaccines, with the president recently calling to break up the measles, mumps, and rubella shot into 3 totally separate shots, the CDC's published recommendations say the MMR vaccine is very safe and is effective, and there's no link between the MMR vaccine and autism.
As we enter the winter months, I suspect this is only going to get worse.
And with cases on the rise, experts say you can talk to your doctor about getting a booster shot if you were immunized between 1963 and 1967, when the vaccine was considered not as effective. And if you can't remember if you ever got the MMR vaccine, talk to your doctor. There are also blood tests available. The CDC says there's no harm in getting an extra dose. Savannah.
So, Emily, a lot of kids quarantined for a long time, and part of that's because of sort of how this spreads and how contagious it is. Why is that?
Yeah, and it is unvaccinated kids. But you think about it, this is a highly contagious virus. The virus can actually linger in the air for even 2 hours after the infected person left the room. So you think about if someone who is infected is walking throughout a school building, even long after they've left the room, if someone's unvaccinated comes into that room, they are at risk of contracting measles.
So it's like if in the example of school kids, even if you're not in the same class as a student, it lingers.
Or even if you're not in the same school. Like there were instances where someone was just visiting the school and exposed the building to the virus.
All right, Emily, thank you so much. Well, we are now going to show you some of the impacts from that big nor'easter. The powerful storm was the first one of the season, putting residents all along the East Coast, all of us over here, through all kinds of flooding and travel chaos. And just as conditions are starting to slow down, a new severe storm threat is making its way to the West Coast. We've got Angie Lassman tracking all of that for us. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, Savannah. Good morning to you. We're going to get a bit of a break on the East Coast, still dealing with some of these kind of lingering showers as that system pulls away. But meanwhile, the West Coast ramping up, of course, with the flood concern, the rain, the snow, all on the table the next couple of days. We've even got that chance of some of these severe storms already, waking up to these thunderstorm watches across parts of Southern California, including Santa Barbara, Los Angeles. That's going to last through 6 a.m. Pacific time. And we do have the potential to see 1 or 2 tornadoes as the morning gets on. We're also already concerned about the flooding. We've got those flood watches up and down the southern coast of California, and that's going to leave us with also mornings just north of Santa Barbara. You can see folks dealing with the ongoing rain working in as this system shifts farther inland. Now, that's what's going to happen through the day today. So that brings the heavy rain and the flooding all the way through the day today across California. And also it ramps up the snow and wind that we're going to see across the Sierra Nevada mountains. That's going to be ongoing through the day today. And then as we get into tomorrow, much of this works across parts of the Rockies. We'll still see some scattered storms across New Mexico, stretching up to the Dakotas. But specifically today, concern for travel up and down the Sierra Mountain range. We've got winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories in effect for places like Lake Tahoe and Mammoth Lakes. Road travel is going to be difficult there. And on top of that, we've got a whole lot of rain on the table all the way through Thursday. This is multiple days of this. So burn scar areas, mudslides, all of that is going to be on the table, specifically for Southern California. Notice 1 to 3 inches will be likely in some spots. It might not seem like a lot, but of course, across this region, it doesn't take a whole lot for us to see some flooding concerns there. So we'll watch for the flash flooding across the Southern California. And then notice just how much snow we're going to pick up. 'Tis the season, right? We've got 36 inches expected in some of those highest peaks, Savannah. This is going to cause, of course, that difficulty with travel, and things don't really start to wrap up until we get into the later part of this work week. So we've got some time to go.
It's also time. Snow, cold. I'm wearing Uggs and a vest today.
Woo. All
right. Thanks, Angie. All right. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. A little later, Joe's going to tune us into why more and more people are choosing to flip on subtitles while they're streaming. He's got some pretty surprising new research that's coming up. But first, after the break, we are taken to the skies with the major airliner looking to link up with Starlink satellites, all to give passengers a much-needed Wi-Fi boost at 35,000 feet. That's next. We are back now with news out of Mexico, where rescue efforts are underway after days of torrential rain and deadly flooding. NBC News International correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with our world news in 60 seconds. Claudio, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning. Well, that's right. Authorities say that death toll from the devastating flooding that hit central and eastern Mexico is now risen to at least 64 people, with another 65 people still missing. Now, the flooding caused by intense rainfall caused canals and rivers to break their banks, triggered landslides, and swept away roads and bridges across several states. At least 10,000 troops have been deployed to assist the rescue efforts. Let's go to Madagascar now, where the president says he fled the country after following what he says is an ongoing illegal attempt by the military to seize power. In a late-night speech posted on social media, President Andry Rajoelina said he was forced to find a safe place to protect his life. The alleged military coup comes after weeks of widespread protests by the country's youth over corruption and the cost of living. Let's end this tour of the world in Cyprus, where there are more cats, according to authorities, than residents. And the authorities can't seem to be able to keep the feline population under control. The environment minister says they currently 2,000 cats are sterilized every year at a cost of more than $100,000 and plans to triple that budget. But it appears that the cats and the government are playing cats and mouse, and the cats are winning. Savannah?
Okay, Claudio. Good. Weird story, but good. Thank you very much. All right, now to a big upgrade that may be coming to your next flight. Unreliable in-flight Wi-Fi. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? It's a top complaint among airline passengers. But now United Airlines is connecting its planes to orbiting Starlink satellites to offer the fastest Wi-Fi yet. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest from a United plane 30,000 feet in the air.
Hey guys, hello from 30,000 feet. We think this is the first commercial live shot ever on a TV station on board a commercial airliner at cruising altitude using Starlink. Look how good the signal is here, right? This laptop here is showing every feed coming into NBC News. All of those feeds rock solid. Look at my iPad over here where I'm streaming on YouTube. I'm showing, as you can see, the Today Show from yesterday. So you're used to having a satellite connection on board a plane that kind of goes in and out. That satellite connection is hitting a few satellites, but Starlink has thousands of satellites, and it is connecting this plane real time.
Takeoff on a United 737, and just in time for the holiday season, a dramatic Wi-Fi upgrade. Connected to 8,000 Starlink satellites orbiting the Earth and providing lightning-fast internet, live TV streaming, shopping, gaming, emails, and document downloads.
So it is super fast. Really, it's just as fast as if you're at home on the Wi-Fi.
As every airline knows, customers are fed up with paying for crashing Wi-Fi.
I need good internet access to be productive in the air, and I don't usually have it. So
you can't rely on it?
Can't rely on it.
Sometimes I have a hard time connecting to it and staying connected.
United Starlink Wi-Fi is free gate to gate, but you gotta have a Mileage Plus account.
From the time you're on the ground throughout your journey to the time you land and arrive at your gate, you have connectivity the entire time. You don't have to wait till you're at 10,000 feet to get a signal.
Hawaiian Airlines also offers Starlink. Alaska plans to start next year. Some international carriers are also on board.
Pretty cool, right? We're at about 30,000 feet or so, and look at the streaming connection. Absolutely solid. In order to make sure it is solid for all 160 people on this plane, all streaming at once, they've got 2 satellite antenna on the roof. But what happens when you've got a plane full of people?
Well, we're ready for it. You will see no degradation of service at all.
Okay, there's a very big caveat here. It is against federal regulation for anybody to be making a phone call or a conference call via the internet at altitude. Here's the thing. If you're going to be on the honor system, right, you can certainly listen to a call. You can listen to concerts. They really want you to have your earbuds in, your headphones in. But if you're going to be talking at altitude, that could get you in trouble, of course, with the flight attendants. And they're really asking you to be on your honor system. They really don't want to have people upset that somebody next to them is engaged in a long, loud conversation. Hopefully that's going to work out. We'll see how it all plays out. Guys, back to you.
We will see. Tom Costello, how cool is that from up in the air? A first. Love it. All right, well, coming up, the future of some of America's most prestigious museums is up in the air this morning. It's all due to funding woes caused by the ongoing government shutdown. But now the Trump administration is making it more difficult for many Smithsonian institutions to fight for their spot in America's history. We'll explain next.
Back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with the redistricting fight in Louisiana.
Let's bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor for the latest. Hi, Sahil. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. We begin today in politics with the Supreme Court poised to hear a high-stakes case involving the Voting Rights Act, which Louisiana's Republican leaders asked the conservative court to gut a centerpiece of the 1965 law. The state is calling on the conservative-led court to prohibit states from using any consideration of race, which currently protects black voter representation when drawing their House maps. Louisiana argues that the racial discrimination that brought about those laws no longer exists. Civil rights activists counter that the challenge is a frontal attack on the Constitution, on history, and on the lived reality on the ground in Louisiana today. If the justices agree, the move could enable more aggressive gerrymandering in the Republican-dominated South. The case will be argued on Wednesday. On the podcast circuit, former President Barack Obama appeared on the comedian Marc Maron's WTF podcast and took a swipe at one of President Trump's top advisors when he criticized businesses and universities who caved to the administration's demands and aggressive tactics. The former president said powerful institutions must be willing to tolerate a little discomfort, saying they cannot be bullied into saying that we can only hire or promote people based on some criteria that's been cooked up by Steve Miller, end quote. And here in Washington, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is planning to meet with President Trump this Friday. U.S. and Ukrainian officials tell NBC News. Trump appeared to confirm that himself when asked about it on Air Force One. Among the items on the agenda is whether the U.S. will approve Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine to use as part of its defense against Russia, which Russia has warned against. And that is a look at what's making news in politics this morning, guys.
All right, thank you, Sahil.
The Smithsonian museums are officially closed. They shut their doors over the weekend after their funding ran out because of the government shutdown. Comes after the White House ordered a review of the museums to make sure they, quote, reflect the unity, progress, and enduring values that define the American story. For the National Museum of the American Latino, which is trying to secure a spot on the National Mall, well, their future is even more complicated. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor explains.
The wheels, the engines, the hydraulics, crowds gathering for a festival to celebrate Mexican-American lowriding culture in the nation's capital. The event, organized in part by the National Museum of the American Latino, a branch of the Smithsonian. Established by Congress in 2020, the museum doesn't have a physical location yet.
My name is Jorge Samanillo.
Founding director Jorge Samanillo says the festival is part of the museum's mission to honor the culture and contributions of Latinos across the country.
I'm hoping that people come away with a better understanding of just one slice of how diverse our Latino culture is, and really want to learn more about our people.
But attacks by President Donald Trump are now complicating these goals, the future of the Museum of the American Latino and Smithsonian institutions altogether. President Trump repeatedly criticizing the Smithsonian, saying it is pushing divisive, race-centered ideology. The Trump administration is also now conducting an expansive review of the Smithsonian Museum exhibitions, materials, and operations.
The Trump administration has accused the Smithsonian of being too woke, of being anti-American. What do you make of that?
You know, I can't comment on all the things that have been said, but I know that the Smithsonian is making sure every day through our self-evaluations and our self-studies that we're nonpartisan, that we rely on expertise.
Earlier this year, Presente, an exhibit by the Latino Museum housed in the National Museum of American History, closed. The Smithsonian says it was for renovations. The closure came after the president's executive order targeting the Smithsonian as a whole. And soon after it closed, the White House published a document saying the Presente exhibit was anti-American.
What do you make of that criticism?
If you had a chance to visit the Presente exhibition, you would notice that it's trying to tell 500 years of history in about 4,000 square foot space. And that's a very difficult thing to do.
Artist Felipe Galindo said he was surprised at the exhibit's closure and shocked that White House officials directly criticized an illustration he made in 1999 named 4th of July from the South Border.
I don't think it's a political piece, it's a more humane piece.
What was your reaction to the White House singling out and targeting your piece of work?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was very terrifying, to be honest. Later I was sad because it was going to be removed from the exhibition. And later I was angry that they closed the whole exhibition about Latinos in the U.S.
We asked the White House about his critiques of the American Latino Museum, Galindo's work, and any potential long-term impacts the government shutdown may have, and have yet to hear back. In Congress, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, including Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democrat Senator Alex Padilla, are working to build a permanent space for the museum on the National Mall.
How hard is fundraising for the museum in this moment, given the president's attacks?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie, the fundraising on the private side, because this is a public-private partnership, may be a little bit tougher at the moment, but it makes it all that much more important.
Senator Cruz's office declined our request for an interview. His Republican colleagues in the House Congressional Hispanic Conference sent a letter in June saying it's taking steps to ensure the museum remains unbiased and called for funding, saying this museum was authorized through the leadership of President Trump during his first term. Now we have the opportunity to finish the job.
Look, I think the Latino community, just like our nation as a whole, has been very resilient. We'll get past this Trump era stronger than before.
Many who flocked to the Lowriding Festival said they hope to see more from the museum, which plans to open a salsa exhibit in spring 2026.
We think it's really important that everyone has a space where they can see themselves.
There's a lot of contributions to our country that are made by Hispanic culture, by Latino culture.
Galindo also hopes the nation will continue to cherish the important role of museums.
Museums have to show always the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, there's an expression in Spanish to cover the sun with your finger. I mean, The truth is still shining out there.
For now, exactly where and exactly when people will be able to see the Latino Museum on the National Mall is an open question. Yamiche Alcindor, NBC News.
Coming up, some big safety changes are coming to Instagram.
When we come back, what the app's younger users need to know about a new content rating system that could shake up the way they scroll. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Let's get to a few meta stories this morning. Your next job could come from scrolling on Facebook.
That sounds fun. CNBC's Frank Collin joins us for more on that and other money headlines. Hey, Frank, good morning.
Hey, good morning again, guys. So as you just alluded to, Facebook is adding job listings again. At first, it added them in 2017, but then dropped them just about 5 years later. They're back now in the Marketplace tab, and they're focused on entry-level service and trade jobs. They're only available to people who are 18 years old and older, and those jobs, they have to meet Facebook guidelines. Slack is turning its chatbot into a full-fledged AI companion. It's testing a redesigned Slack bot that's designed to help with common tasks. You can also use natural language to talk with the Slack bot, and it can do things such as create project plans, flag daily priorities, and analyze reports. It works with tools like Google Drive and Salesforce. Slack plans to launch it broadly at the end of this year. And Apple TV Plus is just no more. The company's rebranding the streaming service simply as Apple TV. The announcement being made as Apple revealed the streaming release date for F1 the movie on December the 12th, Apple TV Plus. It launched at the end of 2019. It's the latest name change for a streamer, joining HBO Max and Paramount Plus. The whole Plus thing was kind of popular a few years ago, but now just Apple TV.
Not necessary. That's all I call it anyway, right?
Right. I don't think anyone's saying Apple TV Plus.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, guys.
All right. There's a major safety announcement also this morning from Meta, the parent company of Instagram. This morning, the social media giant unveiled big changes to their teen accounts. The platform owned by Meta says the changes should help teenagers see safe, age-appropriate content by default while giving parents more control.
In an interview this morning, Instagram head Adam Mosseri told Today Show anchor Craig Melvin about a new rating system. It will send content through a filtering system that's based on the PG-13 guidelines we all know from Hollywood movies. Here's some of what he said.
We've revamped all of our guidelines about what teens can and cannot see on Instagram in a way that is guided by the PG-13 rating that was pioneered by the movie industry.
This is a video of LeBron James, one of the greatest players in the history of basketball. I'm 13 years old. LeBron's my favorite player. Here he is promoting Hennessy on Instagram. Under the new policy, is this blocked?
So under the new policy, promoting alcohol or tobacco is content that teens would not be able to see.
So between 13 and 17, if I follow LeBron, I don't see that ad?
That would be the case, unless you actually asked your parent for permission to what's called more content, so to be able to see all the same content that an adult could see. The way it works is by default, every teen that has a teen account will be in the 13 plus rating, which means that the content that they see on Instagram will largely align with a PG-13 movie. If a parent has the time, and we're trying to raise awareness around these tools, they can set up parental supervision and they can shape the experience into what's best for their specific teen. We're actively exploring ways to further extend parental controls.
But what's the argument against that? What would be the logical argument against letting a parent know that their child is at risk?
So I don't think there is I think we want parents to know. I think what we have to be careful of is the more aggressive we are about sharing with parents and the more we aggressive are about restricting down teen accounts, the more of an incentive we're creating for teens to try to lie about their age and work around it, to get a second phone, to access Instagram just through the web, to have an account that they don't tell their parents about. So it's a balance. We want to empower parents, but we also want to make sure that we're not pushing teens too hard to try and hide from their parents.
All right, great interview there by Craig. We've got NBC News tech contributor Joanna Stearns here to help us walk through this, kind of like understand what we really think about these new guidelines. Great to see you and have you on set. Good morning.
Oh, wow, you guys are real people.
We are.
I know,
we're not AI.
Surprise! Oh, wait, you're not
funny
sure.
with you.
They're very advanced, the robots these days. Okay.
Exactly. Okay, so this whole concept of it being off of a PG-13 rating, I think it's super interesting. I like the specific example there of LeBron kind of seems harmless, but the promotion of alcohol and tobacco would fall into that category. What do you make of this as a step forward?
I think it's a very good step forward because these tools are now default, right?
Yes.
Parents that set up these teen accounts, everything, all of the footage or the content that people see, the accounts, are now guided by these PG-13 ratings. I think the PG-13 and that 13 number is very interesting too, right? We've seen a lot of pushback in the media from experts about how old should you be before you can start to use social media. And 13 is still young to use social media, right? Though these teen accounts start at age 13 and go to 18 or 17.
And you talked about the kids who have second phones. Those are some kids with some money right there. So we know that social media companies like Meta have just been facing pressure recently. We had this Senate committee hearing recently where we saw Meta whistleblowers testifying about child safety research. Talk about the pressure they have been facing from the government, from parents, and do you think that is what's motivating any of these changes we're seeing here?
It's definitely motivating these changes, right? Especially this backlash where people are saying, no social media till you're much older. This is Meta's move here, or Instagram's move here. As we heard Masuri talk about, we want parents to feel like their teens are safe. Right? So if they create an app where there is more safety, well, then maybe you don't need to be older to use social media. I think that's definitely one of the angles they're going after here. And on top of that, like you mentioned, just tons of backlash. I mean, yesterday we saw a law passed in California. Not only are there going to be more restrictions on the apps and make these companies more around age verification, around algorithms, but also a warning label that basically says, this is bad for you.
Yeah, which is something that the Surgeon General's talked about doing federally for a long time. Joanna, I think like some of this might feel really overwhelming for parents. Like especially, I think one of the biggest issues, right, is parents themselves are not really comfortable sometimes with some of these apps. They hardly know how it works for themselves, never mind trying to make sure that the parameters are in place for their kids. Do you think with some of this that the streamlining is going to help that and also help it be tougher for kids to kind of like figure out how to opt themselves out of it, like Adam mentioned there?
Well, look, a big thing that Meta is saying and the reasons they're doing this is to help parents. They've heard from parents that they're very confused by these settings. I mean, parents don't want to be IT managers. That's not what they signed up for, right? So if this is by default, that these teen accounts are, if these teen accounts are by default putting you with guided content that's around PG-13 type of content, parents don't need to do anything. Parents can make that restriction, they can make it more restrictive. They can even clamp down more on that content, or they can loosen it. Now, of course, this brings up, and I'm not a parenting expert, but this brings up the issue of, well, my kids really want to see that, and now they're fighting me about these controls, right? So that doesn't make that part easy on parents, but it does seem to, I mean, we'll see, we've got to see how these play out. Technically, on a technical level, it does seem to make it a lot easier for parents.
Is there something to his argument there that if we make it too much more restrictive, then the kids are going to go away, or they're going to work their way around their parents, and then parents will be lost in the woods and not know what's going on? Is there evidence to support that?
Right, with their burner phones.
Right.
I mean, look, I do think, again, not a parenting expert, but as I remember being a kid, and you would go to somebody's house where maybe they were allowed to do something or they weren't allowed to do something, and you would, oh, they're allowed to do this at this house. They've got the bad snacks, right? So, kids figure out,
cereal,
right? Yeah, right. Like they get to figure out, figure out how to get around this stuff. I think what he's really talking about there is that more onus on Meta, right? If there are more of these accounts that are getting around the age verifications where they know kids are able to see this type of content, well, that doesn't look good for Meta. And so they want to balance that. They want to make sure they are really trying to get teens to the right place where they're watching the content that isn't terrible for them and not getting to, types of, mental health or other types of harmful content.
Joanna, great to have you on set. Thank you so much.
Great to see you guys.
Talker.
See, you're real too.
Yeah. Coming up, the idea of a real leader can take on many forms. You might think of a strong-minded individual or even maybe like your favorite influencer.
But our next guest argues, much like in the world of sports, there's truly no I in team. After the break, I'm going to go one-on-one with New York Times bestselling author John Levy, who's tapping into a specific brand of intelligence to ultimately achieve greatness. Stay with us. This is Morning News Now. Let's end this hour by talking about leadership. We often think the best leader might be someone who's charismatic and outgoing, or perhaps someone who individually excels at their job. Like in the sports world, if you have an all-star player or maybe even a few all-star players, I mean, shouldn't your team win? Well, I think we've learned especially Mets fans, that's not always the case. Well, a new book is encouraging us to look elsewhere for great leadership. It's called Team Intelligence: How Brilliant Leaders Unlock Creative Genius. The book, out now, is written by New York Times bestselling author John Levy. He's a behavioral scientist, and we are lucky to have John with us here this morning. Congrats on the new book. It's great to see you here.
Thank you.
You and I know each other, and that's because we want to give a little background here. John does something it's called the influencers. Now, these are not social media influencers. These are just leaders in various industries who you invite to come have dinner, make dinner together. It's not very good, in case you're wondering. And then the thing is, no one can talk about what they do for a living until the end, and then you suddenly realize you're having dinner with like the most amazing people possible. That, I feel like, did that sort of what you've learned from these incredible relationships you've formed for this kind of help inform this book and why you wanted to write it?
Absolutely. So basically, I've hosted about 4,000 industry leaders from across industry, Olympians, the person who was the commander of the International Space Station, the person who won a Grammy for barking on Who Let the Dogs Out, right? Like across the board, right? And what was clear was that none of them had the same characteristics. And we keep being told that that's what matters in terms of leadership, that you are great at creating psychological safety or that you can get consensus among people or whatever it is. But none of that seemed to match up. And so I wanted to figure out what actually matters.
And a lot of people assume, like, if you hire the star, whether it's the star executive or the star player, that's the key to success. So debunk some of the myths that are out there for us, some of the misconceptions about good leadership.
So I think one of the funnest way to describe this is in the 1970s, a company called DeKalb produced a chicken called the DeKalb XL. So the Ferrari of chickens. Okay. It could outlay any other chicken out there. And what they found was that by purely rewarding productivity, egg laying, then they were able to produce a lot of eggs, but then they became really violent. They'd peck each other. Because when, at a certain point, the only way you can get more resources is by taking them away from the other chickens. A biologist by the name of William Muir said, you know what, let's produce the KGB, kindler, gentler birds. And so he crossbred a bunch of chickens and then rewarded them for being nice to each other in small groups. And then the ones that produced the most eggs as a group kept rebreeding them. At the end of 1 year, he compared the super chickens, those DeKalb XL violent ones, to the ones that worked well together. And the ones that worked well together far outproduced. And this is like a great analogy for the modern workplace. If we only reward the people who are at the very top, then they're incentivized to make sure that everybody else stays at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. So we need to be more like the KGB chickens.
Yes.
So you talk about intelligence, and this is not your IQ. This is a different type of intelligence.
Yes. It's team intelligence. It asks the question, how do we get a team to solve a problem as quickly as possible with the resources they have? And it turns out that none of the things that we traditionally thought actually predict that.
How making sure people feel right, that's part of this too. Like, I mean, some level of empathy or feeling. Talk about what you found there.
Here's what's wild. You know, in traditional teams, we think, okay, I'm going to get the top talent, the top performers. But it turns out there's this too much talent problem. When we get about to 50 to 60% top talent, it causes the team to underperform because people become selfish. What actually makes a difference is not people with the top IQ, average IQ, or even how much people like each other. The single greatest predictor, this was wild, the number of women on the team. And let me just explain, it's not because of chromosomes. It's not like we're about to be sent to the tar pits, right?
Yeah, right.
It's that women index higher on emotional intelligence. And high emotional intelligence allows teams to function better. It lets me know when to push on a topic, when not to, who to go to for answers, and then how to get them to speak up.
You talk about how someone called the glue player in every group is important. Who's the glue player? What's their role in a team dynamic?
So it's really easy to see the stars, right? They put up a lot of points in sports and stuff like that. The glue player is harder to spot. It's the person that makes sure that the team is actually connected and working well together. They have three major characteristics. The first is that they have very high emotional intelligence. So people tend to be able to trust them, right? The second is they put the team above themselves. They they're willing to take time out to support fellow team members. They're willing to do the review of things over the weekend just to make sure everybody does well. And then the third is that they take the actions that nobody else even thinks to take. And so they'll work on something and do research for weeks on end in hopes that the project will work out well, but nobody asked them to do it. And these people become really trusted, and everybody turns to them for support, even though they're not the star player.
We only have a few seconds left here, but for someone who's watching this right now or reading your book and might be saying, I'm lacking in these areas, I mean, like, is this something you can learn, that you can be taught to be better at team leadership?
So the answer is, what you can do is create a culture where the team is rewarded rather than the individual. And also with the upcoming innovations in AI, what we're going to be able to see is that software will be able to tell us, hey, John, you're in a virtual meeting with somebody. It seems that Joe has something to share and you didn't call on him.
Wow.
Maybe you should call on him. And then we get your ideas and the meeting becomes more productive.
I know you are quickly learning AI and everything you can do to make you better at your job. So you're the person to listen to for that. John, congratulations once again. It's your third book. It's called Team Intelligence, How Brilliant Leaders Unlock Collective Genius. And here's the good news. It's available now. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.